Hi everyone! Today is the day we would have gathered on Old Campus to celebrate our achievements as a class. We wish we could all be together, but we hope you've still been able to enjoy, reminisce, and celebrate our class over this past week. We have found many new ways of celebrating, but we've also kept many traditions. One of the traditions we are excited to be carrying on is the announcement of our class's prize winners. Although we will be honoring these recipients when we meet again for our in-person ceremony, please join us now in congratulating them on their incredible achievements. Congratulations to all of our winners and to the entire class of 2020. Tomorrow, we will officially become graduates of Yale College when President Salve confers our degrees.
This is a particularly noteworthy year, as it is the 50th anniversary of coeducation at Yale and the 150th anniversary of coeducation at the university as a whole. In this spirit, we are delighted to announce our renowned Class Day speaker, Dr. Jean Bennett, one of the first women to graduate from Yale College. Dr. Bennett is a true pioneer in the field of gene therapy and has dedicated her career to restoring eyesight. As the daughter of a Yale professor, Dr. Bennett immersed herself in the life of the university long before she became a Yalie herself. After graduating from Yale in 1976 with a Bachelor of Science degree in biology, Dr. Bennett earned a PhD in zoology and cell and developmental biology from the University of California, Berkeley, and her MD from Harvard. She then returned to New Haven as a postdoctoral researcher, living in Silliman College, where her father served as the head of the college in the 1980s. She completed her training at Johns Hopkins University.
Her most noteworthy accomplishment today comes from her own work on gene therapy. Dr. Bennett created a gene therapy for Leber congenital amaurosis, LCA, which is an hereditary disease that causes early onset and progressive vision loss. In 2017, the treatment became the first ever gene therapy to be approved by the US Food and Drug Administration, paving the way for other forms and applications of gene therapy. And now, as FM Kirby Professor of Ophthalmology at the University of Pennsylvania, Dr. Bennett and her team are working on developing a vaccine for COVID-19. She is truly an inspiring example of how Yale alumni continue to make a difference in the world. And so, without further ado, please help me welcome Dr. Jean Bennett.
I was told that many of you would be wearing masks, so I tried on a few of my favorites, but none of them were right for this or COVID-19. So here we go. Welcome to the first ever Yale College Class Day at home, or wherever you may be. It is such an incredible honor to welcome you and to be one of the first to congratulate the class of 2020 and your families on this very special day in this unusual venue. I'd like to give special thanks to President Salve, Dean of Yale College Marvin Chun, writer, lecturer, and communications officer Allison Coleman, and the class of 2020 students planning this event, Calvin Schwartzberg, Ananya Indwar, Nathan Isaacs, Sarah Geach, and Michelle Hugh. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to share the event with you. And congratulations to the faculty, deans, and heads of colleges for all the efforts you've made on behalf of the students and their families over the past 4 years, culminating in the extraordinary events of the past few months and these last celebratory days. As I was gathering my thoughts together for this event, I told my husband, this is really difficult to put together, especially how the world has changed in the past few weeks. To which my husband, a Princeton graduate, replied, "Don't worry, it's just Yale, not Princeton."
5 months ago, who could have imagined the events that have transpired? I remember thinking, wow, this is the year we'll remember because of the terrible fires that consumed exotic animals in Australia. Who could have predicted that the entire world would be faced with the calamity of even greater proportions? That we'd all be wearing masks, hoarding supplies, and being prevented from going to work or school? This 2020 Class Day experience demonstrates the adaptiveness of Yaleys. Perhaps a virtual class day will become a new Yale tradition. Congratulations, new graduates. First, I hope that you're all taking good care of yourselves. My heart goes out to those of you whose friends and families have suffered the terrible COVID-19 illness, and to all of you who have suffered the fallout from the need for social isolation. I hope that you're all adjusting and adapting as well as possible. If it didn't before, the number 2020 now marks and provides extra meaning to all of our lives. I enjoy thinking of the order and beauty and symmetry of numbers, the incidental or coincidental associations of those numbers, and how they impact our lives, our work, and the things that give us pleasure. The number 2020 has held special meaning for me, given my career and experiences reversing blindness. The number brings to mind perfect eyesight, seeing things clearly. Good acuity provides us with a platform to see fine detail, to study and to work and communicate clearly, to affirm what is really important. Is a shelter-in-place order going to prevent you all from celebrating your accomplishments and moving forward with your dreams? Hell no! The Yale class of 2020 will lead the way to clarity and solutions for the challenges that we have all been facing with your resilience, energy, creativity, and brilliance. I hope your experience at Yale has been fantastic and that you've had numerous new adventures, that you've gained insights about yourself and the world, and that you've explored new fields, taken on new challenges, and made friends with many, many people with different backgrounds, talents, hobbies, and experiences. One thing for sure is that the grand finale is unusual, if not memorable. Your experience has been marked by a new divide in history, before Corona, BC, and after Corona, AC. From a Yale history perspective, this makes the early college dismissal in April 1775 during the American Revolution seem trivial. Although none of these compare with what we're experiencing now, I witnessed many disruptions while growing up in New Haven and then attending Yale. During the Vietnam War era in the late 60s, there were disruptions on all campuses in this country due to anti-war dissent and resistance to the draft. In 1970, New Haven was absorbed with criminal prosecutions against various members of the Black Panther Party that had its headquarters on Orchard Street. This case provoked national attention, and tens of thousands of supporters of the Panthers arrived in New Haven. Those were challenging times, but I was moved by the thoughtfulness, compassion, and courage of many Yaleys in feeding and housing some of the crowd. I know it must be really difficult imagining what Yale and New Haven were like 50 years ago, but growing up here with a father who was a faculty member and mother who ran one of the first international baccalaureate programs in the country was pretty special. My brother Bill, sister Nancy, and I hung out on weekends at the Peabody Museum, saw movies at Lindsley Chit, took our first swim lessons at the Payne Whitney Gym. We did all this unattended by an adult. My first volunteer job in 7th grade
Was to feed vampire bats at Klein Biology Tower with bowls of blood.
and that was followed by other jobs. I even got to test intro bio lab protocols in advance of the incoming freshmen. Occasionally, I'd serve as a setup for demonstrations my father gave on laser physics. For one lecture in Dunham Auditorium, he asked if anybody wanted to volunteer to have a wart removed by his argon laser. I raised my hand. Another person in the audience did too. Fortunately, I was selected. My father had a prosthetic arm behind the podium that was dressed with the same sweater that I was wearing. With me behind the podium, leaning over, he proceeded to burn the prosthetic arm in half with the laser. Although one person yelled, "Get away from him, he's crazy!" no one came to my rescue, but they all gave me a hand at the end. There were countless other wonderful experiences.
One of the most memorable was participating in the premiere of Leonard Bernstein's Mass with John Mauceri and Leonard Bernstein in the Vienna Opera House.
That clinched my wish to go to Yale. Imagine what Yale was like when I was an undergrad. There were only 4 elements: fire, water, earth, air. Well, not quite. But there were only occasional landline rotary phones. No cell phones, no 911, not even answering machines. Webs belonged to spiders. I used the slide rule that my dad had given me for my 16th birthday for my calculus class. There was no email. The cloud was still in the sky. We left messages on message boards or notes under the door. There were no CDs or DVDs. I had a 33 1/3 phonograph and a tape recorder. And we used to watch the evening news with Walter Cronkite in the common room on a TV that had a dozen channels, only 3 of which had good reception. Tweets and Twitters were only sounds. There were no digital photos. We used cameras with film that we develop in the darkroom or send away to be developed. 5G was part of an apartment address.
Tinder is what we used to light fires. Grindr is how we sharpened our tools.
Applications were documents that you sent when applying for jobs. There were no emoticons or emojis, and certainly no Google, Facebook, TikTok, or Snapchat. Imagine this: on the 50th anniversary of coeducation and the 150th anniversary of women at Yale, there were no women. Growing up in New Haven, I had no idea that it might even be possible for me to go to Yale. In fact, I remember the heated debates over whether women should be included. The female to male ratio in my class was about 1 to 10, but in science, i.e. my major, it was closer to 1 to 50. For the very few women of color in my class, I'm sure it was an even more challenging situation. It's amazing to me now that the class of 2020 has slightly more women than men. You likely heard a lot about what it was like given the celebration of women at Yale that occurred last fall. At mixers, busloads of women would arrive from the 7 sisters, all-female colleges like Smith and Mount Holyoke, to be ogled by the men in my class. Women athletes in my class lacked the same kind of facilities and equipment that the men were given. The experience, however, introduced me to situations that I've faced over my entire professional career, where there are far fewer women than men who've made it to leadership positions, particularly in the hard sciences. It has led me to proactive in mentoring trainees, whether they be male, female, or transgender, and it gives me special empathy for the pressures and intimidation that racial and ethnic minorities, and sometimes now white men, face today. Before deciding to go to Yale, I worried, what would it be like with my parents being there? There were only a few events that drew embarrassment. For example, my brother Bill, who was in the class of 78 in Yale College, heard that Dad had been seen swimming with his fins, pushing a bathroom scale through the pool. We were quite embarrassed. Dad had been collecting data on drag coefficients in different environments for his computer class that he was teaching. Bill called him and said, "Dad, I hear you've been weighing yourself in the Yale pool. Would you cut it out?" Despite those minimal challenges, I had a fantastic Yale College experience. I took full advantage of new opportunities, many unique to Yale. I got a job washing glassware in the laboratory of a famous cell biologist, Dr. Joseph Gall, and ultimately managed to parlay that into a wonderful independent research experience that made me decide to go to graduate school. I also learned how to follow new developments as they're being made. My husband, Albert, some years later asked me how I learned molecular biology because only the rudiments existed when I got my start at Yale. Al asked if I took a Cold Spring Harbor course. Very few of the tools, for example, restriction enzymes or PCR, were available. I just learned them as they were developed and described. Some of you have asked why I went to medical school after graduate school. Honestly, I'm living proof that you can alter your career trajectory as circumstances change. I realized that as recombinant DNA tools were being developed, that it might eventually be possible to treat disease at its root. I had met somebody who was planning to do this, and I decided that's what I want to do. How else do you learn about the diseases amenable to treatment than to go to medical school? On our first day of medical school, the dean spoke to us about a terrible disease, a disease that didn't even have a name, that was affecting Haitians and homosexuals. During our clerkships, my fellow students and I were in the trenches night and day, taking care of dying young men, drawing blood gases, doing cultures of every bodily fluid with barely any protective gear. At our graduation ceremony, my classmates and newlywed husband, Albert McGuire, was selected to give the class commencement speech, where he described our experience learning about this devastating disease, which had recently been given a name, HIV/AIDS. I can't help but think back to those days now with the current pandemic in mind. Of course, current evidence shows that SARS-CoV-2 is far more infectious and more immediately deadly than HIV. But, like SARS-CoV-2, we didn't know much about the biology of HIV. We didn't have a treatment. It will take time, but hopefully not too much time, to learn what to do to treat and prevent COVID-19 disease. And we're on our way. In any case, what Albert and I learned is that medical training prepares people to work at a high level with incredible stress and endurance, and to put the patient first. We've seen this recently starting in Wuhan, then Lombardy, and recently New York City and other cities. Many of our medical school classmates, including Dr. Nancy Brown, the distinguished new dean of Yale Medical School, and also Yale College alumna, are leading these battles. Another one of the first Yale College co-eds, Dr. Nancy Berliner, is leading the charge at the Dana-Farber and Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. These leaders and others, and the thousands of doctors, nurses, and support staff working day and night, are our heroes. If you talk to them, although many are terrified and exhausted, they say they're just doing their job. Students ask me, how does one become a gene therapist? Gene therapy was still a fantasy when I finished medical school, so I had to develop my own training plan. I was fortunate to experience the Yale campus again during my first year of that training plan in the lab of the Yale Medical School dean at the time, Dr. Leon Rosenberg, while my husband, Al, completed a surgery internship. We had the unique opportunity to become salamanders for that year, while my father was master, now known as head of college. This allowed me to meet many amazing students, many of whom have stayed in touch with my family. In further training at Johns Hopkins, we narrowed in on our target tissue, the retina. It was at UPenn where we were able to turn the fantasy of using genes to treat disease into a reality. Of course, to carry out gene therapy, you need to know the genes and how to deliver them. At that point, we lacked both the genes and the tools to deliver them efficiently and safely to organs or animals. Did that stop us? No way! That's where naivete and energy are an asset. What was it like in those early days? We did our first studies in biohazard gear, such as what you commonly see now in the news, in cubicles with animals with potentially deadly infectious diseases. This is because no one knew whether the reagents we were testing were safe. We de-risked them. We figured out how to accomplish the surgical delivery of gene therapy reagents to the retina, evaluate immune response and stability of gene transfer, what models would be best, and how to evaluate function and safety of our newly delivered genes. The science was the easy part. Other issues were more challenging, such as trying to get a foothold on the faculty ladder. The odds were, and continue to be, particularly low in the sciences for a woman. At times, with the demands and also the desire to be with my 3 children who were then under 6 years of age, it seemed impossible to compete. I scoured my institution for female role models, and I found only 2 female full professors. Numerous other female scientists had been discouraged from proceeding and ended up running the labs of their male colleagues. One of the 2 female professors who had made it told me that her idea of a summer vacation was to leave the lab at 5 p.m. during the last week of August. Most other days she left at 11 p.m. Both of them told me that they decided long ago never to have children. Well, I had kids, so I had to just try to defy the odds. What did I have to lose? We found in our studies that we could make puppies that had been born blind see for the very first time. This was through a one-time delivery of the correct copy of their defective gene to their blind retinas. It was a eureka moment to see a puppy curled up in a corner, scared of bumping into something because it couldn't see, and then to see it running around, catching toys and playing with its sighted friends after a single treatment. We realized the importance of this finding immediately, as did laymen. One of the gene therapy dogs, Lancelot, appeared on Good Morning America. He attended dinner dances at the New York Hilton and presented his story 3 different times to Congress about the importance of biomedical research. He and other canine participants ended up living to old age, still seeing, 2 of them in our home. We adopted them at the end of the study. Of course, our thought was, wouldn't it be incredible to make blind children see? We immediately started planning, but had not anticipated that a disaster in the gene therapy field would bring everything to a screeching halt. The disaster was the death of the first gene therapy patient with another disease, and not one of our patients, but it was at my own institution. This was damning for the field of gene therapy. The FDA halted all gene therapy trials, and there were public meetings and scathing letters. All of the funding dried up, gene therapy companies went broke, and investigators abandoned their projects. Because of the inhospitable climate for gene therapy, there were now numerous hurdles in our way. The safety constraints had been ratcheted up so that there were 13 different committees to navigate: conflict of interest, pharmacy, device, etc. And then even a committee overseeing those committees before we could even complete the institutional paperwork. We had no funding, but we were fortunate to have an advocate in Dr. Catherine High of the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, CHOP. CHOP realized that the majority of pediatric onset diseases are genetic in origin and decided to invest in it. We perfected our reagent, showed that it reproducibly and reliably restored vision in our animal models and was safe, and we addressed one challenge after another. These included legal issues about inclusion of children in clinical trials, developing new outcome measures, establishing statistical analysis protocols for demonstrating efficacy in this rare disease, and addressing all of the unknowns relative to retinal gene therapy. Some of these seem strange in retrospect. For example, what items should be included in the informed consent? Would blind individuals find it distressing to be able to see after treatment? If so, we could offer to remove their newly gained vision, something that seemed unthinkable to the subjects. Would the gene therapy reagent have the potential of being passed on to offspring? We and the parents chuckled as we made sure that the 8-year-old boys in our study knew that they would not be allowed to father children for the next year. There'd only been one gauge of success, the eye chart. That doesn't work for the blind. Instead, I assembled an obstacle course with steps, turns, and doors. Before surgery, the patient failed. After, they navigated perfectly. That convinced the FDA. We initiated our human clinical trial in October 2007.
The father of one of your Yale 2020 classmates, Emma Pierce, assisted.
The volunteers described numerous new things that they could see. However, we remained cautious until we had the first objective data in hand. When I first saw the definitive data after graphing it out late one night, I ran and woke Al up to tell him. It was 3 a.m., but he didn't mind being awoken for this. In the glow of this success, my father asked me whether this work might benefit the 2 blind students he had known in Silliman. I told him, "Dad, the chances are really slim because this gene defect is rare. It probably wouldn't help them." A few months later, my father died. And then shortly after his death, I received a message that the blindness of those 2 individuals was due to the very gene defect that we were studying. Although when we started, we just wanted to see if this would work, we realized that once it did work, we had to follow it to the very end, drug approval, so that others could benefit. Of course, we had not received any training in this process, nor was there a path. However, we persevered with every obstacle thrown our way. It was an emotional moment when we received unanimous approval by the FDA for the drug Luxturna in December 2017, and then worldwide the following year. We were truly the fortunate ones to be able to witness the dramatic life changes experienced by these courageous pioneers, being able to put aside their braille books and blind canes, go to school, get a job, see their children's faces for the first time, live independently, ski, hike, you name it. We were so lucky to be in the situation to know these people and to witness such improvements in their vision and lives. My husband routinely treats people with this inherited blindness now with his first approved gene therapy. We never tire of hearing their stories of what they can do now that they can see well. And we've been working to develop the next generation of gene therapies. With the current coronavirus situation, I, like scientists here at Yale and all over the world, have had to shut down my lab as only research relevant to COVID-19 has been declared essential. This is where some of my Yale experience and grit and determination kicked in. After a few days of anxiety, shock, and depression, I began reading what is known about the molecular biology, virology, immunology, and pathology of SARS-CoV-2. I started talking to one of the lead collaborators, who himself is a Yale College graduate, and who I learned recently has a daughter, Sarah, in this class. Congratulations, Tabins! We discussed how to apply and pivot our expertise and resources to start working on this. It didn't take long for us to establish the preliminary set of studies aiming to develop a safe and effective vaccine. We have no guarantee if we'll be successful, but if we don't try, we won't have anything. This effort has energized me, and I'm sure this resonates with you. We do not want to have a future overshadowed by coronavirus. I know that at some point, we will be able to get back to the projects we put on hold. In the meantime, each of us can try to figure out how to apply our skills the best, or to do what we can to contribute. I truly believe that my Yale education prepared me to reconfigure when appropriate and take on challenges as they appear, to have the bold hopes, perseverance, determination, thick skin, and patience to see projects through. Some members of your class have asked me whether they'll ever see their friends from Yale again. Graduates, not a problem. I've stayed in touch with faculty members and friends from numerous Yale experiences, from the dining hall, roommates, classes, the Yale Symphony, from attending performances and museums and athletic events. I've rekindled connections at reunions. My undergraduate friends and I have shared life events, weddings, births of children, promotions, shows, concerts, career changes, sad events. They are like extended family. In fact, some of the first friends I contacted when the pandemic hit were my Yale undergraduate friends. Those relationships are enduring and ever expanding. We are all now faced with an opportunity for reflection. The world has been so divided, but for once our stress is the same stress, something that binds us together. Our views of safety have changed. Instead of being scared of others, we worry about being the unwitting mules of harm, being Mary Mallon, aka Typhoid Mary, the cook who silently spread typhoid fever to more than 50 people in the early 1900s. Conversely, those of us who have been healthy don't want to experience the disease. We, or at least most of us, have been following guidelines for social distancing and protective steps. Who would have thought that seeing everyone wearing masks would be the new norm? Now when I see images of groups of people without masks, I wonder, where are those people that they're not concerned? It is heartening to see this solidarity, concern, and respect. Some of the changes I've noticed in recent weeks are truly beautiful. It seems to me that people have become more outgoing and more caring. They're bringing groceries and medicines to those in need, lending a helping hand, even if there are some kooky elements like stockpiling toilet paper. I've had the opportunity to meet neighbors who I never even knew existed while walking my dogs. People call out from across the street to ask how the family's doing. People are more appreciative and thankful. We see images and videos of groups cheering and clapping for people who've saved lives. Instead of going out to restaurants, people are cooking and trying new recipes, despite worries about gaining the COVID-20. Children have time to be kids instead of rushing from event to event. They are riding their bikes around the neighborhood without helicopter parents. Part of the reason is likely that there's no traffic and it's much safer for them. Plus, maybe their parents don't mind having a few minutes of peace and quiet. It is nice to be able to take advantage of new technologies to meet instead of flying everywhere. The sky is even bluer for it, and our world has less machine-made noise. I hear reports of dolphins swimming in the canals of Venice, and I'm skeptical of them until I step outside my home and I see a fox running across my neighbor's yard, and a deer with her fawn walking slowly down the middle of the street. The IT world has proven over and over again, and right now, in fact, shout out to Rick Leone and Douglas Forbush, that they can keep us all connected, whether it be in classes, performances, art exhibits, lectures, births, or class day. It's strange and confusing and funny and surreal and endearing and heartening, giving us all a feeling of connection. We now have the demonstrated opportunities for carrying out virtual education, telemedicine, thesis defenses, and for sharing artwork. We can take virtual tours of Notre Dame. We can attend live stream performances of symphonies. Attendance has never been higher. We see Lady Gaga, Mick Jagger, Taylor Swift, and other stars performing in their basements, and we're entertained by comedians appearing in their kitchens on Saturday Night Live. There's baseball in ballparks without fans, online support groups, dance classes, weightlifting, body combat, improvisation, memes, and I even saw poker games on the Yale Facebook page. The coronavirus cruelly robbed you of those very last days at Yale. This is a huge deal, and certainly nothing that any of us anticipated. However, do not despair. This terrible experience has created new opportunities, and your class will shape things to come. This event will galvanize you all to put your talents, expertise, imagination, and passions to good use. You have a huge opportunity for a reset, to re-engineer our world. Disaster makes the impossible become possible. The pandemic has shown us how quickly things can change if they must. We are still in shock, adjusting, grieving, mourning, and recalibrating. But class of 2020, soon we will need you all to step in and roll up your sleeves. The way one deals with obstacles is often what sets apart those that accomplish their goals and those who don't. Of course, a little luck helps, but if we don't try, we don't succeed. Although it can be frustrating, we all learn from the challenges that are placed in our path and the mistakes we make along the way. We learn from being tested and going through disruptions. We learn how to be independent as well as how to collaborate and work with others. It's okay to worry a little bit. That's a protective mechanism as long as it's in check. But be assured that this long and winding road will lead us to opportunities and solutions. It may take time for each of you to recognize where you best fit in, but there are numerous opportunities AC after Corona. For the short term, you can take advantage of having the time and physical isolation to read and think and to fill in the gaps in your knowledge base. It's also important to spend the time on yourself, to develop your talents, whether they be to write, draw, sing, dance. We won't have this opportunity forever. Many of you are nurturing, encouraging, and inspiring your friends, siblings, parents, and grandparents. What a great opportunity to strengthen those unique relationships. Those who have suffered terrible COVID-19 symptoms are going to need extra physical and psychological support from all of us to get well and independent again. People are going to say, "We will get through this." That is not enough. We need to think about the long term. For those of you who carry out scientific research, do not fear. The majority of you who have worked in research labs have had to curtail those relationships due to coronavirus. We need you. Get ready. Things will crank up sooner than you think. For those in other fields, there will be numerous opportunities. We depend on you to unite our fragmented government, to use your economic and financial acumen to address financial problems, to foster business opportunities that are honest and not self-serving, to treat our workers properly, keep them out of harm's way, and give them a livable minimum wage, daycare, and sick leave, to take care of our precious earth and provide habitats for our creatures and birds, to take care of the homeless, impoverished, the mentally ill, and those who are addicted to narcotics, to provide everyone with a high-quality education. We need to stand up to bullies and to make sure that there's no interference from foreign governments in our elections. Remember to vote! And we need to support all of those people who bring beauty, joy, and meaning to our lives every day through music, art, literature, comedy, and performance. Move over scattered, boastful, incoherent, and unscientific behavior and make way for compassion and what Camus described in The Plague as being most important, decency. Above all, there is hope. We have all learned and reflected on what is really important, our relationships with one another. We can all draw inspiration from those who have surmounted enormous obstacles to arrive at our new normal and make that even better, more just, and more secure than the old normal. You're such an extraordinarily resilient and diverse and brave class of 2020. You're wired, pragmatic, driven, empathetic, and creative. You have shown through the recent events how we are connected and that there come extraordinary times when we're impelled to take care of one another in a basic and profound way. The pandemic has already taught you to think beyond your own past expectations, to reformulate them and begin the process of becoming the next generation of leaders. I applaud each and every one of you. My heartiest congratulations and my very best wishes for your continued good health, happiness, and connectedness.
Thank you, Dr. Bennett, for your inspiring words. Your message is especially powerful in the current situation. In fact, it's at times like these when we appreciate even more those figures who have been so instrumental in our daily lives on campus and have really helped to make Yale feel like home over the past couple of years. Being away from campus now just makes us remember how much we value their love and support. At the same time, we also are immensely grateful to those who have been so key to making this virtual graduation ceremony possible. They have put in countless hours to try to make our ceremony as special as it possibly can be given the circumstances, and we are so grateful. And finally, to all of our families and loved ones who have helped us and supported us all the way to this important milestone, thank you so much. We truly could not be here without you, and this is a celebration of you as well. Thank you so much.
And to everyone, family and friends watching from home, thank you for joining us this week. We're excited to continue celebrating when we come together in the future. Until then, we hope that you and your loved ones stay safe and healthy. To conclude our Class Day celebrations, we ask that you'll join us in singing the Yale University alma mater, Bright College Years. We encourage you to take out the handkerchief you received in the Class Day box, or the one you might still have from our first week at Yale. We now present to you Bright College Years, led by the senior members of the Yale Glee Club, as directed by Jeffrey Duma, and the members of the Yale Bands, as directed by Thomas Duffy. Thank you all, and we're glad to have celebrated these bright college years with each and every one of you.
Bright college years with pleasure, the shortest galaxies of life, how sweet the unregarding heart. Oh, why the time so quickly fly? The seasons come, the seasons go, the earth is green, all white as snow. But time and change shall not avail. True